Afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Mac and Mike Show. That's Mike, and I'm Mac. And we're here to talk, when Mac and Mike get together, it's kind of like this, it's kind of like a vaudeville show. Now, I know most of you people don't know what a vaudeville show is like. But a vaudeville show is a bunch of acts that would just kind of like all follow one another. Sometimes it would be a little bit of burlesque, and then it might be a comedian, then it might be a slapstick, then it might be somebody coming out and reading poetry. It just, a vaudeville show was eclectic, to say the least. And when Mac and Mike get together, it's kind of like a vaudeville show. So when I came over today, and it's been a couple of weeks since we actually been together, I said to Mike, hey, usually we hang around, we talk, and then we grab something to eat. I said, what are we going to eat today? He said, I'm making dinner today. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, just short of a 5-star restaurant was Mike's version of spaghetti and garlic toast. And I want to tell you, I wanted to go back for seconds, but I already ate more than 2 people, and it was absolutely delicious. So, Mike, you should post your spaghetti sauce recipe on the link for this Mac and Mike show. But, last week, or the last time we got together, Mike and I spoke a little bit about the Ukraine war and Zelensky and, what was going on there and how we were going to extricate ourselves from it. We had a friend who actually lived in Ukraine and Russia, and we were going to get together with that friend and kind of wrap things up. Unfortunately, that wasn't able to come together today, so Mike and I are left without a specific topic to talk about. That's always dangerous. Because what we'll probably end up talking about is things that probably are disjointed and doesn't matter, kind of like a real vaudeville show. What I want to start talking about first is this AI stuff, right? Because Mike has been deep into this AI, and I was at a meeting, social thing, a couple of weeks ago, and a friend of mine who's an attorney comes up to me and he says, have you checked out this Grok 3? I said, yeah, I have a good friend who's like, he's into X and he's certified and he has the blue check and he gets all the AI stuff. And he's all about it, but I haven't really played around with it. And he looks at me and he says, man, he said, I'm smarter than Grok 2. He said, but this Grok 3 stuff, man, it is awesome. So I started asking Grok 3 crazy questions like, what is the most undervalued stock? Should I invest in it? All those kind of things. And the beauty of Grok is that it does research for, quote, relevant topics, relevant postings or information that's available on the web that you might never see because you didn't ask the question in the right way. And with that, Mike, you can talk about some of your experience with Grok and what Grok has done for... Did I tell you I had Grok write a poem about baseball?
No, but I imagine that's easy.
It was awesome. It was just awesome. I said it's springtime and the grass is green and it smells good and the sun is shining and young athletes, sleek athletes are going out of the baseball and it wrote a poem for me. It was quality. It was good stuff.
Yeah, you should share that. I don't know if you did. Did you share that on Facebook?
I did.
I don't get on there, but I should go look. Because now you got me interested, even though I don't care for baseball. I'd like to see what Grok turned out. One of the dangers you pointed out, which is true, is artificial intelligence doesn't catch every nuance. And it does still make mistakes. Even as advanced as Grok 3, as I told Mac the other day, I asked it a question about why did the Senate Democrats vote against the men and women's sports thing. And then I asked the follow-on question like, okay, I never understood which bills that come before the Senate need a 60-vote margin and which just need a 51. And I read everything Grok had to say about it. I still don't understand. It is lengthy and detailed. But it made the mistake of saying there were 51 Democrat senators in 2025. And I said, now, Grok, that's wrong. And it apologized and it made an excuse for itself and said it thought, oh, even though I was answering a question from 2025, I was going back to 2024. Okay. There's been other times I've asked it questions, and I can't quite think like a human still because there were things I picked up on and I knew that it did not put into its output. And it will get better, but it's already to the point where if you need help writing, I write a lot for my clients, I write a lot for myself. When it comes to myself, I like to write my own stuff, but then I'll pop it into Grok or ChatGPT, even or any AI, and say, improve the following. And then I read it and say, okay, that improved it or no. You know, because sometimes I can get a little sloppy with my syntax. And so it's good for that. One of the things I do want to do is I also develop websites specializing in WordPress, and it will write code for you now. And I wanted to create a plugin. And if I had more time, I would do it. It creates the code for the plugin, tells you how to implement it. I understand what it says and how to do it. It's just still too time consuming.
Yeah.
Because to me, every minute I'm spending creating a database file and uploading through FTP is time I'd rather be doing something else. But yeah, I'm not as negative about AI anymore either. I don't know that it's definitely going to be the end of mankind. I still think there may be a point where we need to have some form of integration or we'll be left behind like chimpanzees, but or to humans. But yeah, I'm not as doom and gloom as I used to be about. There's light on the horizon now. But like nuclear weapons, you can use anything for good or evil. So I'm not concerned about our own as much as I am a foreign adversary.
Well, nuclear weapons really only do evil, but nuclear power,
yeah,
could be used for good or evil.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned specifically Grok and AI, and one of the things that's been in the news this past week was that Elon Musk tried to send another rocket into space, and there was some problem with it, and it exploded. And there was a lot of criticism of Musk and SpaceX that said, hey, why do we want the guy that's blowing up spacecraft in the sky to have any say over our, air traffic controllers, for example? And I think the criticism is misplaced. I think that, when you look at the money that Elon Musk and SpaceX is spending on their rockets, it's not government money, it's not tax money, so what do we care? What criticism is it righteous for someone to throw his way when he's doing something with his own time and money? And also, I would say, and this is also different than government, I am certain that when he sent this rocket up and it didn't make its destination, that they learned an awful lot about why that rocket exploded, what caused it. And, as my dad taught me when I was knee-high to a jaybird, the only people not making mistakes are the ones not doing anything. Mm-hmm. So was the criticism misplaced?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Musk has said that himself, that each of these attempts, they learn something from each time. And he expects to have these kinds of failures. He doesn't go into this blind thinking, oh, this is going to work. Because there's a lot of things that he's experimenting with to improve things. So, I mean, think about our own lives not as advanced as we go through life. We're always trying, if you're going to succeed, like, I opened my business when I retired from the Air Force. I didn't know if I was going to succeed. And I read the daunting statistics in the first 5 years, 90% of new businesses go out of business. And the next 5 years after that, 80% of those 10% go out of business. When I hit the 10-year mark, I said, okay, I made it. Now, I was never rich. I never made tons of money, but, I'm okay. And but there's a certain amount of risk that goes into any endeavor, and I think the American spirit overall is that of entrepreneurship, risking things like Trump is doing. We'll argue about tariffs and all the different things, and he is doing things differently. He's breaking the molds, and we are taking risks, but we've been doing the same damn thing. Okay, it's time to try and take a sledgehammer to things and try and do something different. And Ross Perot, long before Trump, who ran for president, he always said, we ought to try things in America because we can always go back to doing the failed things we did before if the things we try in the future fail worse.
Yeah.
And that just makes sense.
Talking about that, talking about trying new things, one of the things that Elon Musk is currently famous for, obviously, is the Department of Government Efficiency. And supposedly there's a relatively small group of programmers using an AI tool to kind of drive this whole thing. And these young people are uncovering all kinds of waste, fraud, and abuse. And one of the stories I read recently that Elon Musk himself posted on his X platform was that in the past, the government, that is the administration in power, majority of the seats of Congress and the presidency, they would create these relatively new, he used the term pop-up, non-government organizations that were, meant to be nonprofit and do some form of good work for our nation or in various communities. And there was an awful lot of these, green, that is non-traditional, energy kind of things. And they mentioned several of them, and one of the ones that they mentioned was this power forward, started from virtually nothing. It was a piece of paper. In other words, when we start talking about the charitable organization, it wasn't like it existed for 10 years and had 50 employees and
Right.
and multiple awards for all the good work they've done. This Power Forward was like a couple of people, a piece of paper, and $437, and they got a $1.9 billion grant for whatever Power Forward does, because they didn't really say in the grant what they were going to do with it. And I don't think people in America are anxious to justify that kind of funding of organizations without a little bit more firm goals and objectives.
Try and go get a loan for anything, and you
Yeah.
got to come up with a business plan that's written out. I don't personally think every business needs it, but if you're going to want a loan, you're going to have that.
The question becomes, and I know that probably a lot of Americans are asking this question. I mean, the question that I ask, and I don't know, so I don't want to criticize and I don't want to be too harsh on this evaluation. But my point is that where does the largesse of the American public for trying new things end, and where the potential graft and corruption begin? If you asked me for $9, let alone $1.9 billion, I would ask you what you wanted it for. And I think that's the kind of curiosity and inquisitive nature of almost all Americans. Can I borrow $20? Yeah, what do you need it for? Well, I'm going to go down to the bar and I'm going to get a couple of double shots of whiskey and get drunk and lay on the floor and puke. Well, no, I'm not going to give you $20 for that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So where is that line, Mike?
Well, that's the problem with everything, where the line is drawn, and that's why I think Elon Musk is saying, these NGOs have got to go. If you're going to
That's
go,
a pun. NGO, got to go.
Well, the Democrats are big into making their songs and chants. There's one for the right. The NGO has got to go. If you want to fund these kinds of things, fine. I do believe in public-private partnerships. That's essentially what SpaceX, not in its entirety, but it has some partnerships with NASA and the U.S. government. But it has a lot of its own stuff that it does, like you said, funds itself, and Starlink, etc. So, I just think if you're going to, like you said, one of the things would be if you had a long-term, successful nonprofit organization or organization of any type, for-profit or nonprofit, that had the potential of helping the entirety of the American people, not just a particular segment. If it benefits the country, okay, the government could lend a hand, get into, and that's caused some great successes in the past. SpaceX being one of them.
You were talking about SpaceX. Was it you that sent me the thing by Degrassi that said, space travel is going to be very, very big in the next decade?
Yeah.
And he said not driven by government dollars, not driven by necessarily by wealthy personal investment, but by tourism.
Tourism. Yeah.
And there was like 8 or 9 of those predictions he made, right? That's
Yeah.
the one I remember.
Yeah, well, I have personal connection with one of them. One of my clients that I handle, an electrician in Florida, he actually put together the command center for one of those balloons that takes you up into outer space, or just to the edge of space, space perspective. And so that was pretty cool that he did that. And so, yeah, it's beginning now, and it'll only get more and more. Jeff Bezos is going to send his wife and 2 other women up there. I forget who they are. Did you see that one?
No.
Yeah, he's going to send them up in his rocket next. Right now it's the playground of the rich and famous. Even to get on the space perspective thing, there's a long wait list and very, very expensive. But like everything else, DeGrasse Tyson is correct. It will come down in price eventually. It'll become like airline flights. In the early days, it cost a lot of money, and now it's you go to Southwest for $100 or something.
Talking about Bezos, did you see where Bezos owns the newspaper, the Washington Post?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see where he came out and he said, "Okay, from now on, there will be no more slanted kind of one direction."
Yeah, I forget the exact word he used.
Yeah, it'll now be, and the editor of the editorial, he quit.
Yeah,
that wasn't what he signed up for.
No, he wanted
free speech. Well, I mean, Bezos talking about free speech. Is that crazy or what?
That is, considering he's a Democrat. Most Democrats aren't for free speech.
And why is that? Because the Democrats were always at the forefront of fighting for free speech.
Yeah, what's the old saying?
Do as I say, not as I
watch
do.
what you wish for. You might just get it.
Okay, yeah.
And once your ideas are challenged through free speech, then you have to defend your policies instead of just chanting things and brainwashing people.
Yeah, where does free speech end? Donald Trump obviously just gave a State of the Union message in Congress, and Al Green, congressman from Texas, was up there screaming, and I don't even know really what he was talking about, but Al Green's history is not what you would call a pristine kind of resume.
No, I think he's got some mental issues.
Yeah. Well, there was some sexual abuse. I mean, actually, maybe even a rape. That was in his history. But is that free speech when you're standing up? And I guess not, because the Speaker of the House had him removed by the Sergeant at Arms. I guess there's protocol and certain decorum needed in certain settings.
Well, it's everywhere. It's even like Trump wants to stop giving money to Columbia University because of the protests against Israel. So, yeah, there is a point, like, number one, you can't make terroristic threats, but the other thing is you have a right to assembly and speech, but those things have to be designated. In other words, in the college campus, for example, a lot of colleges said, yeah, you can have free speech and protest, but you have to do it here.
Yeah.
You can't interfere with students trying to go to class,
right,
because now you're stepping on somebody else's rights.
Right.
And that's what happened with Green. This is a time and a place where you're standing on other people's freedoms, and that's where the clash comes. Like, what did you say? The Constitution ends at the end of my nose, or something like that?
It goes before the Constitution. It was Old English law. Your right to swing your fist ends where it hits my nose.
Right.
And yeah, but that State of the Union message was more partisan than I believe many of them have been in the past. You know, I mean, when he says, "I'm naming a peaceful reserve," in Texas after this young girl who loved parks and loved nature, and she was brutalized by illegal immigrants. I'm going to name this park, and nobody says a word. Mm-hmm. And then there's the 13-year-old young man who wants to be a policeman, and he's been fighting cancer for the last 5 years. So they thought he wasn't going to see his 9th birthday, and here he is, 13, a cancer survivor, and the director of Secret Service, I think, gave him a deputy Secret Service badge, and not a peep, not a clap, not a congratulations from some people. What was the other? Oh, the guy whose father passed away, and they appointed him to West Point. Mm. Not a single. I don't know whether the guy's Republican or Democrat. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
His father died, and somebody made the gesture of helping him get his desire to be a West Point cadet. I mean, there's so many things wrapped up in that. You know, just losing your dad. Here's a young man who's obviously a good athlete, a good student, and he wants to be part of the long gray line. And nobody wants to recognize that that's a noble endeavor by a young man. I mean, partisanship shouldn't go that far.
Yeah, well, it gave Trump the opportunity partway through. He said, look, and you could tell it was just off prompter. It was just totally, just spur of the moment. He said, look, it doesn't matter what I do. I mean, I could cure the worst possible disease in the world. And, you know, these people on the left just, you know, wouldn't appreciate it, wouldn't clap, wouldn't be happy about it.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, he tried to say, why don't you work for the good for America just once, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he has changed his tone. Now, he does criticize in a way that, I mean, if you stop, so you think that all the things he criticized the previous administration on are a Donald Trump thing. But if you go back and look at the speeches by Obama and, you know, even Bush and some, they all blamed previous administrations in these congressional speeches.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just that the way he's got a history, anytime he says something in your mind, it's a little bit exaggerated. But he's come down quite a bit, and you know he's just trying to get as much done because he knows he's going to be fought every step of the way. He knew that he was going to be challenged in courts for each one of these executive orders, but he did that because he knows it's going to take a year or two till it gets to the Supreme Court. But it's got to be decided, so let's, you know, take the sledgehammer to it and let it go to court, and we'll appeal it and get it up to the Supreme Court eventually. So, yeah. It's a time to reshape America.
I don't know, Mike. I worry for the future, not for me, because the time I have left, it really doesn't matter. But for my children and grandchildren, I do care. And I look at the world today and I see advances in AI. I see advances in robot and drone technology. And, you know, I wonder, I see advances in space and undersea exploration. You know, what is the world going to look like 20 years from now? That is, if we don't kill one another, right? I mean, who was I talking to the other day? They were saying about, you know, Donald Trump wants to give a golden dome, just like the Israelis have the Iron Dome in Israel, to protect our nation. And I said, well, what do you think about the satellites up there that have weapons that we don't know anything about yet? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, these satellites that have weapons that are able to take out ICBMs that have shot at us. We don't have something like that. I said, you don't think so? I said, do you know what prompted us to put those satellites up there? And they said, no. I said, because the Chinese put satellites up there specifically to take out our satellites.
Yeah.
Anti-satellite satellites.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, there are people in our government and in our nation that are trying to defend and protect this nation from those enemies, all enemies, especially the foreign ones. And just because they're doing it doesn't mean they have to tell us about it, you know?
Right. Lockheed Martin is the one that said they could have a system up fairly quickly. They said the technology is already there. You have people like Palmer Luckey, the guy who invented the Oculus, who was put out of Facebook, but, you know, because of his political stances. But he's like #1 American hoorah independent billionaire who develops artificial intelligence and puts it on platforms that exist pretty much, or makes small modifications at his own cost and then sells it to the government. He's not asking for government grants.
Yeah.
Palmer Luckey is actually one of the unsung heroes in the United States.
Yeah.
He's to me, he's just as much of a hero as Elon Musk. I really think he's not as rich as Elon Musk by any stretch, but he loves this country. He really does.
Yeah, but if he took some of that weapon technology and put it to the highest bidder in the world stage, he could be as rich as Elon Musk.
He could, but he will not.
Won't. Yeah.
He's an uncompromising American patriot.
Yep.
And a young man.
Yeah.
You know, in his 30s, early 30s. So he'll be around a long time.
Much longer than you and I will be, Mike.
Yeah. Well,
do you ever think about that, your own mortality?
All the time. I mean, it's something we think about in the military, hopefully. When you join, I thought about it as a young man once when I had a near-death experience. And then when I joined the military, it's one of the things I would talk to people about. I honestly thought better to die quickly in a war than to slave away in a back of a tractor trailer unloading packages for UPS or
Yeah.
even working as a supervisor in a United Parcel Service facility. But yeah, I mean, I think more Americans should think about their mortality. Mortality gives us a sense of purpose, drive. Without death, there would be no sense of urgency. You could always say, "Manana, man. I'll just whatever the thing is. I'll just do it tomorrow."
Now wait a minute. It sounds like you're, poo-pooing that whole manana thing a little bit. I want you to know, as far as procrastination goes, I am absolutely one of the best procrastinators in the entire world. I have developed procrastination to an art form.
Yeah, I'm not quite to that point. I do with certain things, taxes. Ooh, that's the one thing I.
Yeah, that's what you're always doing your taxes in October. I
Yeah.
said, Mike, April 15th is tax day.
No, you can extend them to October. People don't. If you own a business, you just put in file your extensions, and then if you owe money, you pay a small percentage. It's not a big deal anyway.
Well, how long have we been talking, Mike? Are we close to the end of this day of Mac and Mike?
26 minutes.
That's a short one. Should we talk? What else do we have to talk about?
Gosh, I don't know. There's so many things like.
I know. You want to tell the story about me crawling into the barber chair and me telling the barber, make me look handsome. And he said, there's only so much we can do with what we start with, right?
You pulled that one out of your own butt.
Well,
self-deprecating humor is good.
Yeah, well, you want me to tell what the barber said when you crawled in the chair?
Go ahead.
They said, well, I thought you were using the dog groomer.
Oh. I do need a haircut, but
I don't do dogs.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this side head of hair. It's touching my ears and stuff. It's like,
uh-oh.
Yeah, I used to be a hippie. Not no more. It's just this time of year I don't want to go sit next to somebody sneezing and coughing all over me while I'm sitting in the barber chair.
No, I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess we should just conclude it with whatever people are thinking about Trump. I don't think there's as much resistance from the population, the people. I think there's a huge amount of resistance from the politicians. And okay, let's get off on this tangent because Greg Gutfeld said something that I'd been thinking for a long time. Thank God Trump had the election stolen or didn't win, however you want to see it, in 2020. Because if we hadn't had that election go the other way, we wouldn't have RFK Jr. We wouldn't have Elon Musk on Trump's team. We wouldn't have Tulsi Gabbard. We wouldn't have 80% of the average voter saying DOGE is a good thing, that we need to clean up all the corruption and change things.
There's so many disjointed reasons why the Trump team is so diverse. If you ask Elon Musk why he supported Donald Trump, it was because of free speech. Why did he buy X, or what used to be Twitter? Because he was concerned about free speech leaving the public square. Mm-hmm. Isn't it wonderful that an African American thought so much about free speech that he spent that amount of his personal fortune to be able to protect it? And, what I think is so interesting about the Trump administration, whether you agree with him or not, whether you like DOGE or not, all the stories that you see about, well, Marco Rubio and Elon Musk are feuding, or the other one that says, they got President Elon Musk on the front of the magazine cover. All they're trying, when people criticize the waste and abuse that the DOGE organization is uncovering, they criticize the process. They criticize something about whether or not private information is well. They never criticize the waste. They don't criticize the 1.9 billion given to Power Forward when we don't even know what it's being spent on. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you're going to receive the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune having been thrown at you, you want it to be thrown at you for ridiculous kind of insignificant, made up Trump to use a pun, trumped up charges about what's going wrong in the administration.
Yeah, let me get to that point on Elon Musk having access to your personal information. Remember, the guy started PayPal. Okay, so here's the guy that had your credit card information, your
And your bank account.
Yeah, he had all your financial information, and yet you entrusted that to PayPal, and many millions still do.
Yeah.
Now, ask yourself the other question. Who has access to your information now? And who would you rather have access to your personal information? A billionaire who doesn't have the time or the need to do anything with that information, or a low-level bureaucrat sitting there who could make money off of selling your personal information?
That's
You
right.
didn't elect him. He or she is not very rich, but they have access to all this. Oh, okay.
And with the reduction in force going on in government, he or she may be fired, may be let go, and there may be some incentive for them to steal
There
that
you go.
information.
So
There
it's
you go.
a good thing, we started talking about AI. I'll close with this thought. I asked artificial intelligence to answer why Democrats, as a united front in the Senate, voted against the bill that would have kept men out of women's sports. Now, I won't go into the details. You go ask any of the artificial intelligence services out there. I don't know if others will answer. Grok will answer. And you tell me if any of the reasons that they cite are something anyone with a reasonable mind would agree with.
Yeah.
And start asking those questions about everything
Yes.
that the Democrats. Yes, question everything. And see what the reasons they can come up with, because I don't ever see any like reasons other than what you just pointed out. They're just they're making stuff up that it's most Americans see through it. And I am just praying to God that we get somehow 60 senators on the Republican side in the Senate and keep a majority of the House in 2026.
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
Mac and Mike.
Out.
Out.